If you're about to pick up Reaper for the first time, but find the action list and mechanics overwhelming, then this video is for you. In this Reaper primer, we'll go over how to play Reaper at level 70 specifically, including both single target and area of effect, AoE for short, rotations. We will also go over how to use the utility actions available. For role actions, please refer to the video in the top right corner, although keep in mind that Feint also reduces magic damage now. Now then, let's begin. First, Death's Design is a debuff that increases all damage you do to enemies affected by it. It also gives you some soul gauge if an enemy dies while affected by it. We'll get back to this in a bit. Shadow of Death and Wall of Death applies Death's Design to a single target and in an area around you respectively. If you apply it to an enemy already affected, it instead extends the duration by 30 seconds, up to a maximum of 60 seconds. You should make your best effort to always apply this debuff as quickly as possible. Even if an enemy is unlikely to live long, Death's Design can pay for itself with the soul gauge it grants you, especially when used in an area. With 3 or more targets, Wall of Death should always be used, as its damage meets and exceeds Shadow of Death at this number of targets. On 2 targets specifically, you may benefit more from using Wall of Death to apply the debuff to both enemies if you will need to switch between them within the next 30 seconds. Otherwise, on 2 targets, Wall of Death does less damage than Shadow of Death. Next, we look over your basic combos. Slice, Waxing Slice, and Infernal Slice make up your single target 1-2-3 combo. They each generate 10 soul gauge on use. When fighting 3 or more enemies, you replace this 1-2-3 combo with Spinning Scythe and Nightmare Scythe, which makes up your basic AoE 1-2 combo. These attacks also grant 10 soul gauge on use. Both of these combos should be used when you have no other more important options available. Conveniently, none of your other actions will cancel these combos, so you can always pause them to do the more important actions on time. Now, about that soul gauge. You have 2 abilities to spend it with that you can weave between your weapon skills. Bloodstalk functions as the single target option, while Grim Swathe functions as the option for 3 or more enemies. Using Bloodstalk or Grim Swathe grants you 1 stack of Soul Reaver, but keep in mind that if you do any type of attack that is not a Soul Reaver spending attack, it will remove the Soul Reaver stack and you lose the opportunity to spend it. As such, make sure to spend your Soul Reaver stacks immediately when you get them. Speaking of which, you have 3 ways to spend your Soul Reaver stacks, although 2 of them work together. Gallows and Gibbet are 2 weapon skills that do the same damage and have mostly the same effects, except that they function as opposites. Gallows does extra damage from behind an enemy and boosts the damage of Gibbet, while Gibbet does extra damage from the side and boosts the damage of Gallows. The damage boosting effect lasts a long time, so unless you're prevented from generating soul gauge for an extended period, you should be able to alternate these 2 attacks over the duration of a fight, as long as you keep in mind which one you used last. Additionally, Bloodstalk will also change into either Unveiled Gibbet or Unveiled Gallows depending on which of them is currently buffed. This does increase its potency as well, but otherwise is just an aesthetical change and does not require you to fulfill positionals. I will refer to Bloodstalk as both itself, Unveiled Gibbet and Unveiled Gallows, as they're entirely interchangeable. Guillotine works as a 3+ target alternative to Gallows and Gibbet. Keep in mind that both Grim Swathe and Guillotine are frontal cone attacks, while most of your other AoE attacks are circle AoEs around you. Whenever you use Bloodstalk, you should follow up with Gallows or Gibbet, depending on which one is enhanced at the moment. At the start of a fight, you can just use whichever one is more convenient. Additionally, you can also make quite frequent use of the role action True North, which nullifies positional requirements for a time, although this should mostly be used if the positional is unreachable, rather than to avoid doing it. You can tell the behind of an enemy from the open part of the targeting reticle, the 3/4 circle underneath your target. The sides are the 2 quarters that are further away from the front-facing arrow. If an enemy's targeting reticle is a complete circle, then all positional requirements are automatically fulfilled. This is common with immovable enemies and enemies in content such as Eureka or Palace of the Dead. For 3 or more targets, you always follow up Grim Swathe with Guillotine. Before moving on, let's briefly talk about keybinds of these 3 buttons, as well as Bloodstalk and Grimswathe. When under the effect of the later unlocked Enshroud, the Soul Reaver buttons turn into Cross Reaping, Void Reaping and Grim Reaping respectively, with Cross and Void Reaping having to be alternated between with a request time of 1.5 seconds, meaning the button presses have to come out relatively quickly. Grim Reaping replaces Guillotine for the AoE alternative. At an even higher level, Bloodstalk and Grimswathe are replaced by Lemur's Slice and Lemur's Scythe, which are available as abilities once after every pair of reaping attacks. As such, you may benefit greatly from keybinding in such a way that it is easy to both alternate between Cross and Void Reaping, meaning Gallows and Gibbet, but also have easy access to Bloodstalk, that is, Lemur's Slice, while doing so. Similarly, Grimswathe, or Lemur's Scythe in this case, should be easily accessible together with Grim Reaping, or Guillotine. To finish off your offensive toolkit, you have 2 weapon skills that share cooldown: Soul Slice and Soul Scythe, which functions as the 3+ target alternative. You should do your best to use these weapon skills on cooldown, as they are your absolute best sources of soul gauge with no competition. Whenever you have a charge of Soul Slice, you can use it, followed by Bloodstalk and then Gallows or Gibbet. This specific 1-2-3 sequence will probably happen very regularly. As soon as there are 3 or more targets, you naturally replace Soul Slice with Soul Scythe. Later on, Soul Slice can hold 2 charges, meaning you can be a lot less frantic about getting the charges used immediately. Make sure you avoid using Soul Slice if you already have more than 50 soul gauge, so as to avoid wasting any of the resources it generates. Avoid this issue by spending soul gauge if Soul Slice is about to be ready. Now, let's cover your utility actions. First, Harp is your general ranged attack. It does not produce any soul gauge, but it will do the same damage as Slice, so the damage loss is not too massive. Harp does have a cast time, and, as a spell, it will not scale with your skill speed if you have any. If you can't be in range for your more powerful attacks, Harp is a decent option to repeatedly cast until it is safe again. For movement, Hell's Egress and Hell's Ingress are 2 abilities that share a relatively short cooldown. Egress teleports you backwards, while Ingress teleports you forward. They both also cause your next cast of Harp to be instant, which is very helpful if you are in the process of moving around anyway. You should only use these abilities for movement, and the instant cast of Harp should only be used if you have nothing else you can do. In most combat situations, you will likely only find the instant Harp cast useful when using Egress. At a higher level, using one of these options enables you to return to the starting location by pressing the other one within a few seconds. As such, you may greatly benefit from getting used to using Egress for escaping attacks, such that you can use this portal to return faster. Finally, you have Arcane Crest, which also has a relatively short cooldown and puts a short duration shield on you that prevents 10% of your health and damage. Try your best to use this ability whenever you anticipate or are actively taking damage. With all that out of the way, let's cover attack rotation, starting with single target. Your highest priority is to apply Death's Design, so that it is always active on your target. As such, on single target, you use Shadow of Death as your opening action. When relevant, you can make clever use of Hell's Ingress to reach targets quickly. Immediately after Shadow of Death, use Soul Slice, Bloodstalk and then either Gallows or Gibbet, depending on your preference. Make sure to position yourself correctly to benefit from the positional damage bonus. After that, you move on to a priority list. 1. Apply or extend Death's Design if its duration is below 10 seconds. 2. If you have over 50 soul gauge, use Bloodstalk followed by Gallows or Gibbet, depending on which of them is enhanced. Keep in mind the positional bonus. 3. Use Soul Slice charges, which circles back to step 2. Use Bloodstalk and then Gallows or Gibbet. 4. Extend Death's Design if its duration is below 30 seconds. 5. Use your 1-2-3 combo, Slice, Waxing Slice and Infernal Slice. An extension of point 2. If Soul Slice is on cooldown and you are not at 100 soul gauge, then you don't have to use Bloodstalk immediately. You can delay it a few weapon skills until it is convenient to land the positional if you are in a situation where it is unreachable. And an extension of point 1. You should make sure to extend the duration of Death's Design and not have to reapply it every time, as if you do that, then the Shadow of Death attack itself will not benefit from the damage bonus. While small, this damage bonus can add up. For AoE fights with at least 3 enemies, you replace each of your single target actions with the equivalent AoE action. Shadow of Death is replaced by Wall of Death. Bloodstalk is replaced by Grim Swathe, with Gallows and Gibbet being replaced with Guillotine. Soul Slice is replaced by Soul Scythe. And your 1-2-3 combo is replaced by your 1-2 combo Spinning Scythe and Nightmare Scythe. Make sure to be a bit more aggressive with soul gauge usage on AoE, as Death's design can sometimes result in you suddenly getting a large amount, and if you don't have space for it, then it goes to waste. I have been made aware that some of my viewers like to use my hotbars as guidance for their own keybinds, so for your convenience, here are my fully filled out action bars for the Reaper job. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions or anything to add, please leave a comment down below. Fun fact, the Reaper is the only melee damage dealer without positionals on their regular 1-2-3 combos. Unlike Samurai that eventually gets them, Reaper stays that way, which is pretty neat if you like melee but don't like positionals that much.